Welcome to the Front End Nerdery podcast about front end development and design. I'm your host, Todd Libby. And today we are wrapping up our second half of our conversation here with Joe Natoli. Joe, how are you today?
I'm good. Apparently, I'm here because I can't shut up. For better or worse.
Which is fine because it makes for a great podcast. Come on now.
Yeah. Damn it. Exactly. Have at it.
Yeah. So let's jump right back into it, shall we?
Yeah.
We were talking about, difficult clients and resilience and toxicity, adversity, all that. What I wanted to ask, and then now that we have plenty of time today to ask, is and maybe you can explain this better than I can ask the question. Hopefully you'll be able to understand the question. And the question is, there are, quote, experts out there. And usually I see these experts with their Udemy courses, or they're always constantly, hey, if I get 10,000 followers, then I'll release a PDF of my book for $15.99.
Sure.
How can people, I guess, differentiate between, I'm going to say it anyways, the snake oil salesman and the people that are on the up and up?
I'll tell you the truth. That's tough. It's tough for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The first reason it's tough is because those marketing tactics are what you learn quickly if you're going to put yourself out there and sell courses or sell platform or sell books or sell whatever. Those marketing tactics are absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. So your number one goal is to get people paying attention to what you do. Right. So the tactics, unfortunately, don't change much from person to person, right? Between snake oil salesmen and between people who genuinely give a shit whether you learn anything or not, right. And whether you can apply that stuff, to your work. What's the difference? The difference is in the proof. The difference is in what happens when you give that a shot, right? And you say, okay, fine, give me your free PDF or give me, I'll pony up the $15 for your course or whatever it is. The proof is whether you can actually take that stuff and apply it to what you're doing and do something with it. Now, I'll get back to this in a second. The other thing is, I also think there's a difference in the way that you ask. I know everybody who knows me knows that I market myself, right? I use social media to do that. I use email to do that. I use all sorts of things to do that. What I try like hell not to do is ever put out an empty pitch to just say, hey, go buy this thing. Even in like my promotional emails, like our mantra here, and Ellie taught me this, okay? This is her wisdom. She taught me this a long time ago. If anytime you're going to ask somebody for something, right, for their time, for their attention, for their money, for whatever, you have to sort of prove in to say, here's why it's worth your while. Here's what you're going to get. So if I send a promotional email, I'm trying to spend 70% of that teaching you, right? Mm-hmm. Giving you something that you can take away and think, all right, the next time I do this, I'm going to try that approach, right? And see how it goes. So I have no problem asking for the sale. That's a necessary evil. But I think you need to do it in a way where you give more than you ask, right? And across social media, it's the same kind of thing. I spend a lot of time commenting on things or answering people's emails or questions or direct messages and things like that, simply because it's what I believe, right? First of all, I mean, if you're in a position where you're fortunate, which I most certainly, absolutely am, unquestionably, then I think it's on you to give back. All right. I've always been that way. I was brought up that way. And I think it's the most important thing you can do. A lot of people went out of their way when I was coming up, especially when I was young, and didn't know what the hell I was doing, a lot of people went out of their way to give me their time and their tutelage and their right guidance, attention, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So I feel a real responsibility to give that back because it's the only way anyone succeeds.
Right.
Right. We all have to help each other. That's how this works.
Yeah.
In general, it's the only way any of us get better. Nobody does it by themselves, no matter what any of these experts would have you believe. There's no such thing. Okay. There's always someone or something or some, additional force helping you get to where you go.
Mhm.
So back to, the courses and things like that. I think that if you're going to put a product out, and this is the hard part, all right, but this is the hardest part to me about product creation of any kind, right? Courses, books, podcasts.
Yeah.
Every single time you do it, there has to be something that's useful, that's actionable, that's practical, that someone can take and try and go, fuck, that worked. Right? I mean, that really worked. This is awesome. That component has got to be there, and that is not easy.
Mhm.
All right. I could spout UX principles and ideas and sort of, hot takes on things all day long. Not all that is going to be actionable or useful. And in this profession is littered, unfortunately, like every profession, I think, in the age of the internet, is littered with people who are sort of talking the talk, but their content and their courses and their boot camps and their whatever doesn't walk the walk. It doesn't get anybody anywhere. People try it and it falls flat on its face, right? Because corporate politics inside a company is like, yeah, whatever. And that's a wonderfully lined out process. That diagram looks fantastic. Never gonna fucking fly here ever.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like the arguments about agile and iterative development, which I'm a fan of all those things in theory. However, if you've got one department in a company that is working in an agile fashion or an iterative fashion, and the rest of the fucking company works in a waterfall, slowed down 80 levels of approval kind of way, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You got to adapt what you're doing to deal with reality. And that's, again, to try and answer your question, my approach has always been, I try like hell to deal in reality. I try to just tell the truth. I try to stay away from mysticism or empty promises or anything of the like. If you ever hear me say this is going to radically change the way you do things, it's because I've legitimately seen it radically change the way people do things, not just once, over and over and over and over and over again over time. So,
right. Yeah.
I think but to your point, I think that's tough to tell.
Yeah.
At first blush. My warning sign to everybody, I think, would be if I had to name it, and I'm sorry, I'm giving you a really long-winded answer, would have to be watch out for people who ask for more than they give.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's usually a sign that there isn't much back there. Right. There isn't much substance behind that surface. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty much what you can say about most of the stuff that you see. Well, I see anyways on Twitter. Like, I see a lot of it with not only UX, but with development and design and even accessibility stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, I feel like this is the way I judge things. Right. If somebody is telling me that this is, the right way to do this, or this is an idea you should consider, I kind of need to have some proof right then and there. I need to have a piece of it. I need to have enough of the theory or the principles or the thinking or the whatever to allow me to go, there might be really something in that, but you got to give me some substance, right? I can't make that determination without substance. And I, like a lot of people, like you, I think too, I'm very skeptical of everything that I hear. But if you give me a piece of it, right? If you reveal a little bit, give a little away for free, so to speak. Well, now you got me. All right. Now I'm gonna invest the time or the money to check this out because I think there's something there.
Yeah. So that was my approach with talking about the substance, that was my approach with when before, I think it was, and I think I talked about this last time we spoke, when I was looking for a possible transition into UX,
Mhm.
which I kind of still, well, I've kind of always done UX considering accessibility.
Mhm.
I was looking for like a boot camp or a course I could take, and with substance. And I found one. I won't name who it was. Not to say it wasn't good. I never finished. I should have finished. I could probably still finish. But there's one that was out there, and it was good. Very hands-on
Mhm.
with the person that puts out the content. Very, as far as I see, well known, well respected in the community. And then I found your course, which I was going to take, never did, for whatever reason.
Not enough time, man.
I'm still thinking about doing it though. I really am.
Yeah.
But and it's just, I need to have that, I do some research, and I need to have that feeling like, okay, this is the person I am going to learn something from. So that leads me into my next question, which is, who are those people that we can find, whether they have a course or not, or whether they have a little mini boot camp or not? Who do we look for in UX that we can follow and learn from, and know that we're getting, I
Yeah.
guess, for lack of a better term, some sense of leadership, I guess, or some sense of guidance. Guidance would be even better.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there are a lot of those folks,
Mhm.
right? And certain people obviously come to mind, like, Lisa obviously
Great.
comes to mind.
Yes.
She is, because, and you can, to me, you can, like, here's a person, not to sort of, because she gets uncomfortable when people talk about her, but just sort of go with, Lisa Angela for a second. But
Mhm.
the one thing that she does, all right, when she tweets, loud and clear, it's a very honest, no agenda kind of take, right?
Yeah.
Here's what I see. Here's what is. Here's what we really need to think about. Here are the questions that we should be asking that we're not, in a way that genuinely makes you stop and think,
Mhm.
right? That genuinely makes you think, yeah, these are questions nobody's asking. So, but the thing about her takes is that they are uniquely her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You
Yep.
sort of feel her personality coming through those words. It's not,
Yes.
it's not, hey, I'm here to like push this agenda because I really want you to do something.
Right.
And there are a lot of folks like that. You know what I mean? I think, Nick is that way. My friend Vincent Braithwaite is that way. Alba is that way. Vivienne is that way.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of names, just sort of usual suspects. And whenever I'm put on the spot, I have a hard time. But again, all these folks, for better or worse, right? Whether you agree with every take or not is irrelevant.
Mhm.
What's important is that all these folks are putting themselves forward and sort of giving of their knowledge, their time, their experience in a way that really has no other agenda than to try and elevate what it is that we're all doing. And I think you sense that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And so to me, that's what you're looking for. When you hear somebody start yakking in a loud voice publicly, it's a question of whether it sounds like a human or not, right? Whether it sounds like a person who legitimately has something to say because they care deeply
Yes.
about something. Like, my thing is always, people ask me what I do. It's like, well, I feel like I tell the truth in a loud voice. Right. And that truth is sort of the it's the critical element, and it's hard to quantify or hard to describe. You just sort of feel it when it's there. You know what I mean? When you look at some of these folks and you look at their follower counts, that's not an accident.
Right.
It's because they're constantly putting out stuff that hits you here, really, and makes you think, yeah, I never considered that. I mean, I think I've learned more because I've spent more time on social media in the last 2 years than I have in my entire life. I've learned more in the last 24 months about a lot of different areas, and I've questioned a lot of my own assumptions, long held beliefs. And it's all because of folks like that, right? Who are just leading, I think, leading with their hearts first, leading with their care for other human beings first.
Yeah. And I can tell personally from my point of view when I, have a dialogue with these people, such as yourself, such as Nick, at points in time where, like on the Clubhouse chats that you were having.
Yeah.
I'm getting value from that. I am learning something. I have a question and it's being answered, and I'm getting value from that. And it's that community which kind of reassures me that, okay, these are the people that I'm going to follow them on Twitter. I'm going to, whatever they got going online, check their personal sites or whatever, and learn from them. It's not,
That's how I feel about events, to be honest with you. And I've been invited to do certain things like, hey, would you like to take an hour and do this for a conference or for an event or for something? Could be a student group, right, that reaches out. Whenever I do these things, I want them to be Q&As as much as possible, simply because, man, I would much rather do that than come in with a topic and an agenda and say, like, well, here's the thing I want to talk about. I think I'd almost always much rather flip that on its head and say to people, look, whatever's churning around in your head and your heart right now, just ask me. Okay. Or ask these other sharp people, right, who are sort of up here with me in the case of Clubhouse. I just think that's a better use of everyone's time. And it's the kind of thing I don't do often enough and don't have time to do often enough lately. But I really, really desperately want to get back to it because I think there's just a ton of value there. All right. Yeah. There are a lot of questions. If I've learned anything, there are a lot of questions that UXers and designers and developers and all sorts of folks tangentially involved in product design have. And they're not being answered by and large by the sort of one-sided broadcasty type stuff that goes out there. Because if it was, these clamoring questions wouldn't be there. Right. So I just appreciate that format wildly. And it's also what I love about Twitter is that there's these constant valuable conversations. There's noise too, like everything else. I mean, that's okay. There's going to be some. I have days and weeks where something pisses me off and I can't let it go. And my threads are a little more finger pointy than I want them to be. That's going to happen, right? You just have to roll with it. But I think you have to constantly come back to center, right? What is this about? Well, for me, it's about giving people hope. It's about giving them belief. It's about telling them, look, no matter what it is that you're dealing with right now, you can move through this. You can elevate yourself. You can learn. You can get to the next level, whatever it is. You don't have to feel stopped. You don't have to feel stuck. And remembering that is what keeps me going. And like I said, I think a lot of people share that kind of sentiment.
Yeah, definitely. So now I'm going to turn this to something that I care deeply about, and that's accessibility. And how accessibility and UX tie in together. In your opinion, how do they tie in together?
I think it's really simple. Okay. Not that I've been an outspoken advocate of accessibility. I have not, but that's another thing, another area where like this last 6 months, I would say, especially is a wake up call in any number of ways for me. Because here's where the connection is to me. Your job as a user experience professional, as a designer, as a developer, as somebody who puts things out into the world for other people, your primary job is to care about other human beings. Period. All right. And if you care about other human beings, then you should also most definitely care whether things are available to them, right? Whether the same level of opportunity and ability to move themselves up in whatever way, shape, or form that is available to them, right? That is accessible, that everyone has the same shot, that things are truly inclusive, that they're equitable, that they're respectful, that they're kind. All right, that's a core requirement of this job. And what a lot of those conversations have done for me is it recentered why I'm doing what I do in the first place and what I want it to be. Next year, for example, from a content standpoint and topic standpoint, is going to look very different for me.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 books I'm writing right now are in that sort of same vein. I'm kind of done with everything else. On every possible level, this job is about caring about other people. And I'm sort of not willing to talk about anything else at this point.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yep. Yeah. So would you say that, and this might be me just softballing this question into you, but would you say that if something is accessible, it offers a great user experience? And if something is inaccessible, it offers an awful user experience?
I think that's accurate.
Okay.
I think that's completely accurate. And I want to say this again, because I think it's important. Okay. There's one instance in particular it happened within the last 18 months. I want to say, I think, and that was with Alba, and I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name because I always butcher it. Alba V, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay. Where she said something publicly and I reacted to it in a way where I didn't really get what was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And she was kind enough to direct message me and say, look, sort of set me straight, right? You need to open your mind a little bit and think about this aspect and this bad aspect and this. And I read down a list and I went, holy fuck.
Mm.
All this stuff that made perfect sense in the light of day at this point, but that I had sort of never fully thought about to the depth that it deserves and sort of been blind to in a lot of ways. That was a real wake up moment for me.
Mm. Mm.
So to answer your question, yeah, it's impossible for something to be truly good design, truly appropriate design, or truly appropriate UX, truly valuable, useful, relevant UX, if it doesn't include, or if it, more to the point, if it excludes
right.
a certain percentage of people from even participating in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, we're lost. All right, we're really, really lost if we're allowing this to happen. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a kind of the driver of the conversation going forward. You cannot pretend to want to help human beings and say, except for these people.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is, if it's bad, if the user experience is bad, or, that's going to affect the accessibility of whatever, website, app, whatnot. If a user has bad experience with one of those, site, interface, whatever, how important is giving feedback to, let's say, a website that sells, I don't know, jackets, for instance. Okay.
Sure.
How important is giving them feedback on that experience? And because I say this because we've seen lately the accessibility overlays, which are an awful user experience. Never mind the fact, totally inaccessible. I've given some feedback to a few sites
Mhm.
where I've always gotten, well, we'll have our web team look at it.
Which is the most you're going to get in most cases.
Right. Although I did see one site actually take off the overlay, which was great. I'm not looking for, oh, way to go. Way to go.
No, but that's what's necessary. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what's necessary. You may get a response that says, well, we'll forward it to our web team. But in a lot of cases, that's exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the only way that message moves up the chain. You have to start somewhere. Okay. So not saying anything, doesn't make any sense. I mean, I respond to emails in my inbox all the time with that kind of thing. Like company will promote something and I'll reply back and say, well, did you realize that when I hit this link and I go here are all the problems I have. And I don't have any problems with vision or, using my hands or any of these things. But here's the parts that were difficult for me. Imagine what this is like for someone who doesn't have those same faculties, or exclusion in some cases, things that are either purposely or inadvertently exclusionary to people of certain races. Okay. I've seen plenty of that as well.
Yes. Yep.
I think that you absolutely should offer that feedback. I mean, whatever mechanism is available to you. I think that in some cases, you should make a public spectacle out of it as well, right? When necessary.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, here's the problem. I don't even know if that's the right way to start this. Like, let's just take accessibility overlays, for example. From someone who's been inside corporate organizations of various shapes and sizes in just about every industry, I know exactly why that became a thing. All right. It became a thing because nobody inside that building has the time or the budget approval or whatever the hell it is, right? Any layer of political nonsense that is it. Shit. There are a lot of things that are critical to people's lives that are nice to have,
Mm-hmm.
right? With just getting the service right and getting it out there and getting it sort of performing at 90% consistency every day. So things like good design, good UX, accessibility are way the fuck on the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
So when someone says, hey, all those complaints we've been getting about accessibility, here's a solution for $9.95 a month. We can do this or whatever the hell it is. I don't even know what those things cost. But it's a checkbox on someone's list and they go, fine, do it. Like, who gives a shit? I don't even like that money's not even worth thinking about. Just spend it, do it. That's exactly what that is. Nobody has the time or the wherewithal or the focus or the impetus or the motivation to dig deeper into it and say, well, actually, in some cases, this is causing a lot more harm than good until people start bitching about it, right? Which puts them back where they were before. Like, oh shit, we thought this was going to solve this problem. Why is it not going away? Companies generally of any kind will not make a move until the outcry becomes so great and so widespread and so negative in a lot of ways that they have to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's been my experience my entire career. Good design and good UX is the same battle until there's a moment where it hurts them, right? In some way. And that could be personally, right? A department head, a manager, right? Causes them to lose some of their political clout. Their bosses are on riding their asses. Like, how dare you let this bullshit spread on my watch? Like, do something about it.
Yeah.
So it's not even necessarily having the best of intent. It's just someone's neck is now, sort of under the guillotine. They're going, fuck, what are we going to do about this? But companies have to feel it in some way. And that's just because they're so friggin' huge. It takes a long time for an organization to really feel the consequence of any negative action.
Mm.
It literally takes a while from the social media outcry to the 6 departments that has to go through before it gets to somebody who is even remotely empowered to do something about it.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Right. It's sustained effort. So the good thing that's happening right now across my social media channels, at least, is that everybody's having a piece of this conversation.
Mhm.
That's what has to happen. It can't suddenly stop. It can't, sort of fade out. It has to keep going, and the intensity has to be there. Right. And you have to sort of keep your foot on the gas in order to make real meaningful change happen. And then, of course, the other side benefit of all that is that there are people on teams, and I know this because I counsel them, who, to my way of correct thinking, take it upon themselves to say, all right, we got 8 hours in a day. What can we do to just bake this stuff in the work we're doing anyway?
Right.
Right. Don't ask anybody's permission. Just do it. That's my thing. That's been my thing for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. If people, the thing I hate most, Todd, is when people look at me and say, well, they won't let me. I hate that phrase.
Mm.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it because it's bullshit. No one has to let you do anything. You got X amount of time over the target, especially if you're the person who's in there mucking with code. Okay.
Yeah.
You got an opportunity every day to do something differently without anybody's permission. And these things are so small and so insignificant that no one's going to see them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be better for the person on the receiving end.
Yes. And I'm glad you said that too, because that's something that I gave a talk about recently is, accessibility. Well, the company wants to wait. The company wants to hold off. They want to do that. Just do it.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Just do it. And more likely than not, 99% of the time, it won't be seen.
Right. Right. I'll give you a great example. There are lots of things that Jared Spool and I disagree on. but that said, he and I both did a conference recently,
Mhm.
the UX Hustle conference, which is one of the best investments I think anyone can make with their time. For those who are listening, it's called the UX Hustle conference. Amanda Worthington and Sophia Prater run it. It's tremendous. But this last time around, during his talk, he said, look, does anybody ask whether we're going to do QA on a product? You know what I mean? Like a product before launch goes through a QA process, testing process.
Yeah.
Does anyone ever ask whether we're going to do that or not, or ask if it's okay to do that? No, it's a part of development, period. Everything goes through QA while code gets frozen. And then once it passes, it launches. That's a given. So why the hell do we ask anyone whether we can do UX stuff or whether we can do this part? You know what I mean? This is how it is. You hired me to do this job. Here's how it's done. Deal.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
It's really, but every team I've ever worked with, I will tell you, in the last 20 plus years, as long as I've been consulting out of the 3 decades of my career, I can't count the number of times I've said to a room of people, stop waiting for someone to give you permission to do this. Just do it.
Yeah.
Stop. Because it's not coming, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, in the time that you've spent arguing about it and trying to sell it and trying to create another pitch or another meeting or another whatever to try and convince people to do something they should fucking be doing anyway, just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right there with you.
So let me answer this. Do you think a company that, again, yeah, we'll give it to the web team, but you don't see any results, so you don't hear anything. I mean, more times than often, you probably won't hear anything back. But do you think that a company that just, I guess, tosses the feedback off to the side or just says, you know what, whatever, do you think they're worth dealing with in the future? Do you think they're worth, I guess, going back and saying, oh, well, they fix that, or, do you think they're worth dealing with in the
I
future?
think it's a big question. And I think there are a lot of parts of that. I think that if anytime you can avoid doing business with somebody whose principles you don't agree with, you should do so.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I vote with my dollars all the time,
Mhm.
as I learn things about organizations. At the same time, there are trade-offs, and some of those trade-offs are difficult. Right? It's hard to give up certain things when they function and are benefiting people in a certain way. So you're constantly weighing the pros and cons of, okay, is this the right thing? I'm still on Facebook, for example. I still have 2 private groups on Facebook. Reason? Because running and managing those groups, there are a couple of reasons, is infinitely more cost effective than any other possible way I could do it
Mhm.
because of all the built-in tools on a platform.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the first part. And I'm just not talking money, talking time as well, time investment. There's a lot there that runs in a way that requires a lot less of my time. And then, of course, the money we'd have to pay if we were paying somebody. The other part is X amount of people are there and X amount of people are interfacing with me and with other people in any number of ways. And I'd lose all that if I ported it over somewhere else. The third part of it is, from a pure business perspective, I have a lot of people who are my built-in audience, my paying audience, quite frankly. I got to weigh the cost of that as well. Now, I have real problems with Facebook, real problems, like everybody does.
Yes.
But I'm not at the point where I can just kiss goodbye. I can't. It would be suicide for me in any number of ways.
Right.
All right. That's an unfortunate reality. It's not one that I like. It is still reality. So eventually, I think we'll find our way out of this into something better.
Yeah.
Right now, not possible. You know, lots of folks hate Amazon with good reason as well, particularly for what it's doing for local businesses. I'm a mom and pop business kind of person, always have been.
Yeah.
And that's where I go wherever possible. Here's the unfortunate reality of what's starting to happen though. If you need something, and it's an important something, like for instance, I need to fix, because I still do this kind of stuff occasionally, I need to fix my hot water heater or my furnace or something going on in my house. It used to be you could walk into a hardware store, any hardware store, and find some of these parts. None of this is rocket science, all right? The parts on these systems didn't suddenly magically appear. They've been the same for 30 years. But nobody carries them. If you go into even a Home Depot or a Lowe's, they don't stock common parts in a lot of cases anymore. So what are you going to do? I'm going to go to Amazon because I know they fucking have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I got to solve this problem if I want my water to keep running.
Right. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many instances there have been like that. And it frustrates the hell out of me, you know? The times we've had to go into stores, it's like you really want to be able to purchase this here, and it's just, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I understand why it doesn't exist, because it costs that store money to keep that inventory. It's hard. It's a constant balancing act. I could never run a retail store in a million years, ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the trade-off and the constant agony of, do we take the risk of having this stuff sit there and not sell, or don't we? That would sink my ship in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That stress. So I get it. But to your point, I mean, my answer stands, whenever possible, and whenever you can do so without hurting yourself in some meaningful way. Yeah, you absolutely should vote with your wallet.
Yeah.
There are certain airlines that won't fly anymore, period. I don't care what happens. I don't care if it's the only flight. It's not happening.
Yeah.
All right. Because of their practices, their ethical practices in particular. It's not happening ever again, as long as I live.
Yep. So that reminds me of, I just recently walked into a Barnes and Noble bookstore, and I was like, I haven't been in a bookstore in I don't know how many years.
Right.
Because the stuff I'm trying to find, I can't, but it's on Amazon. And I was like, all right, I want to go physically into a bookstore because for me anyways, I can't do the digital books. I need that tactile. I need the pages in my hand. I need the book
Sure.
in my hand.
Sure. Yeah, I love
And
books. Records
yeah.
too, same thing.
Yeah. Vinyl, I'm glad.
It's part of the
glad.
experience.
Yeah.
Part of the experience.
So glad it's come back.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm hoping I find this book that I was looking for. I found it. I'm so glad I went in there,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a good feeling, right? I mean, it's just it's a better feeling.
Yeah. It's like, and that along the same lines too, we don't see as many malls as we used to because of Amazon. They were, and in my opinion, are the killer of the mall,
Certainly.
And where I am now in the Phoenix area, there are a few malls, and I've been in one, and granted that time of this pandemic we're in, I was reminded why I I didn't need to be in a mall at this time.
Yeah.
So,
right.
but at the same time, I was like, it was like reliving that experience of how this, going to the food court, going around shopping and looking at stuff and everything. So yeah.
And you see what's happening there as well, right? If you notice, most shopping centers or malls, there used to be you'd have a mix of big box stores, right, and franchises,
yep,
and smaller, independent, local shops who are renting space in the local mall or the local shopping center.
Yep.
And what's happening is those local places are disappearing.
Yep.
They're disappearing because they can't afford the ridiculous lease payments.
Yeah.
And they're not making enough money. They're not making enough profit. My wife and we went out to dinner the other night, and we stopped in a store to return a shirt that she had bought me. And this happened to be a chain. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That she had bought me out when she was in California. But we called the store and they said, well, you can bring it back to anyone, which turns out isn't true. This local store in National Harbor near DC, these stores are locally owned. They're independently owned. So the owner buys the store, and it's not like a typical franchise thing. It's like it's their store. They live and die by this store, right? They make their own decisions. And this woman, she told us, she's like, this is supposed to be the busiest day of the week. We've had 3 people in here all day. This is 7:00 at night. And she's like, it's been this way practically since the pandemic started. She's like, to be honest with you, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Because they're underwater, completely upside down, completely underwater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, we bought something just because I felt like I want to, just to help this woman feel a little bit better. It's her and her son working behind the counter. And that's where we are.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just that there are all these trade-offs, right? It's a series of trade-offs. And again, I think the only way companies learn their lesson, the only way organizations start doing something different is when people say, you know what, can't go there with you anymore.
That reminded me actually of, so I worked for a small game store while I lived in California.
Mm-hmm.
And then that game store got bought out by a bigger brand, national.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a few years of that. And then a big corporation bought that store and all the chains, and they were chains. And suddenly everything changed. It went from a small game store, you see all this, RPGs and all these miniatures and all this stuff. And then I went to certain board games, certain, it was funny too, because it just seemed like it turned into from a hobbyist game store to a KB Toys.
Right. To here's what's popular and here's what we want to
Exactly.
sell you. Not what you want to buy. It's here's what we want to sell you.
Exactly. And that feeling of the three people all day, that actually, it wasn't three people. It was a little more, but that was the same thing where it was just, there was nobody. Now, back then, no, there was no pandemic, but the people that you would normally see in the store weren't there anymore because it had changed so drastically.
Sure. And there's probably an entire connection that's lost as well, because, you could go in there and you could talk to people and they would recommend things. You could have conversations. And it was a social experience. It was a human experience, as well as just a transaction. The transaction was the least important part.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. You went back for the other stuff. Record stores are exactly like that.
Yeah.
That was exactly the reason to go to the record store, right? To talk to the folks that work there, just to shoot the shit, and they'd say, oh, hey, this is coming out next month. You got to check this out. Or we got an advance of this, listen to this. And they put it on, right? And I would spend hours in record stores for that reason. And I never, not once did I ever go to the record store and not buy something, whether I could afford it or not. That's part of the equation, right? And that's part of the humanness of shopping, of I don't know, everything that we do. And that's the part that is missing in all the electronically mediated pieces of what we all do.
Yeah.
I just built a small table for my wife for her birthday. And I was looking for specialty lumber. I was looking for rough, live edge, big slabs, right, that I could cut and shape and do things with. And there are places online that sell it. Okay, but it's like, and there are hundreds of places online that sell it. I mean, go to Etsy right now and do a search for live edge wood. It's like,
yeah.
But I looked low and high for local lumber yards that carried it. And sure enough, I found one 20 minutes from me.
Mm-hmm.
And this place was amazing. I went in there and they were unbelievably helpful. They're pulling stuff down. It's like a warehouse. They're pulling stuff down off of high shelves. And guys like, you should take a look at this. This sounds like what you're. So I was in there for an hour and a half. And it turns out, I mean, what I wound up building was beautiful, but it would not have been. All right. There's no way this would have happened had I not walked in there and it not been that level of human interaction. Right. User experience, customer experience.
Yep. Yeah.
That human part, that is a core component of how you do this stuff. So to maybe try and bring this all back around, I mean, that's the part of accessibility and diversity and inclusion and all these things. That's the part that is lacking. And I think to some degree, in my heart of hearts, I really sort of feel like maybe that's the part that can be brought back, right? Where everyone gets to participate in a way that's more connected. You know what I mean? That's more conversational. That's more human in some way. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Oh yeah. To me, you are. To me, you are.
All right,
I know it.
It's all that matters. All that matters because it's your show.
Well, if nobody that listens to this, it doesn't make sense. They can email me and
what the fuck was Joe talking about?
I'll forward it to the web department.
Duly noted.
So I have a couple more questions before I get to the final three. Clubhouse chats. Are you still doing the Clubhouse chats?
I'm not, and I haven't. Haven't had the time, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
It is the biggest reason. I checked it out, and I would honestly like to know from people whether Clubhouse is still something that people are using, because I miss it. All right. I really
Mm.
enjoyed doing it. There was something about voice only that really appealed to me. Now, what was a bummer there, because we were just talking about accessibility, what was a bummer is the degree to which they were excluding people. I don't even know if that's the case anymore. I would hope that they've rectified those things.
Yeah.
But I have no idea. I've seen Twitter Spaces, haven't tried it yet. Like I said, my enemy right now is time. But the thing I miss about Clubhouse is the humanity of it, for lack of a better word. Maybe it was
Yeah.
timing, right? Because it's a pandemic, we're all isolated in our houses.
Mm.
There was something really intimate, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
about voice conversation.
Yeah.
More so than video, more so than seeing the person on the screen. I don't know why. It just felt that way. And all those sessions were great, even the ones I did, just myself. They were inspiring. I mean, I walked away from every one of those sessions feeling really good and positive.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd be curious to see if people are still there and still have interest in doing it again. And for anyone who's listening, let me know. Maybe I'll find a way to carve out time and pick it up again.
For me, it felt like being on the phone. And by that, I mean being not on a smartphone. I meant a phone.
Yeah, good point.
It brought me back to the days when
Good point.
you were on a landline and you could walk maybe 10 feet before you were repelled back by that cord.
By the cord.
Exactly. That was the part that I always loved about doing those.
You're right about that. I never thought about that. You're right. Because as you're talking, I'm sitting here going, okay, I didn't really hate talking on the phone until I had a smartphone.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah. The other part too was it was like the party line that we used to have on those phones.
Yep. Those of us of a certain age know how that was too.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as the accessibility piece with Clubhouse, I don't know if that has been rectified, and I'm going to look into that actually because it's piqued my curiosity. I didn't see. Now I have my account still, but it was, and I can't remember. I think it was something to do with transcribing of the chats that they had somebody transcribed chats and they ended up suspending this user, and there was
I saw that
about that, and it was like,
for what reason?
Yeah, trying to make things accessible. Trying to make things accessible, and
makes no sense. It's only to their benefit, right? People are going to read the transcript and go, "Wow, it's a great conversation. I need to go check this out." That's how dumb they are.
Exactly. Always willing to give second chance, because I think maybe they realized, and I believe that user was unsuspended.
I hope so.
But yeah, we'll put that question out there on the podcast Twitter account and see.
Yeah, do that. I'm curious to see what people think, and if they're still hanging out there, and maybe I'll just find the time to do it. I mean, the other thing I noticed the last time I checked out the interface is that there's a lot of garbage in the feed. My God, is there a lot of garbage in the feed?
Yes, there is. Yes.
It's like a daily talk show, Jerry Springer kind of shit. Like, what is this? And I supposedly have a curated feed, right, where you tell it what topics you're interested in. But so I don't know, that could be part of it too. But I am really curious to see if people still find value, and if it's worth doing again. Yeah,
and I think another piece of that too is Twitter Spaces has taken a little chunk out of that, because I see never mind the fact that I don't particularly care to see that interface on the mobile app, but that's just personal preference. But I see a lot of Twitter Spaces now with the people that I follow, they follow me. I've never done one. I had one scheduled, but I couldn't do it. I wanted to give it a try, but I guess there was something with the accessibility of that, which again, something else I got to look into. But yeah, it just your Clubhouse chats just reminded me of the old days of being on the phone and having those party line chats. And
Agreed.
you can't hang up on a smartphone like you could with one of those old.
It's different.
It's
You don't get
very
that
different.
that satisfaction of like bang.
Exactly.
Hard plastic against hard plastic, like
Exactly.
satisfying crunch, you know.
So the last question I had before I get into the big three
Yeah.
is your courses on Give Good UX.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything about them in
Um,
particular or just in general?
How does somebody, get there, and what do you have to offer?
Sure. The URL is learn.givegoodux.com. And what I am trying to do, I mean, where we started with this, right, 2 years ago, it's been in beta for 2 years. And basically what that means is I opened it at a beta price. Okay. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, wow, like, holy shit. A lot of us, myself included, saw a lot of our livelihood go away in one fell swoop. So it's like, at the same time, there's all these people trying to ramp up their skills. So I said, well, screw it. We'll keep the prices where they are as long as we can. So initially it was, I'm going to take everything that I've done, right? Every book that I've written, every course that I've done at Udemy, and everywhere else, presentations I gave to clients, right? Private stuff, talks that I've given at conferences that weren't available publicly. I'm going to take everything I got and put it in one place across any number of different topics related to doing this work, UX and product design. And then I'm going to put out piece of new content every month. Could be a new book, could be a new training video, could be a new section of a course. Like Ellie and I have the Business of UX course, which is basically, for anyone who's ever thought about going into business for themselves. It's absolutely everything that we've learned over the last 20 years, which, as you may imagine, comes from making a lot of mistakes. So hopefully maybe some people can sidestep that stuff. But the goal of UX 365 in general, as it grows, okay, and as it has grown, is I want to spend more time talking about the stuff that I feel like nobody talks about, right? Nobody necessarily needs another course on, here's the process of creating prototypes, right? Or here's how you ideate design, or here's how you process. That's been done. It's out there. I've done it myself. I don't think that's the core of what's needed. I think the core of what's needed is how to deal with difficult situations, how to deal with difficult people, how to advance your career in an era where no one is willing to give you or your portfolio the time of day, right? How do I deal with these ridiculous design challenges and these hoops that I'm supposed to jump through? How do I keep going, right? After so many instances of sort of getting knocked down in a number of ways, right? That happens professionally, it happens personally. Hell, just learning how to work with teams, with stakeholders, with executives, and somehow work users into that equation, I think is a massive, massive undertaking for most people in most places. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. The answer to the question, how do I do this? What do I do? Like, to me, it's, I want to create a series of missing manuals, essentially, right? Here are the parts of doing this work every day that nobody talks about. The political messiness, the personal messiness, the need to be resilient, right? The ability to work through toxic situations, difficult conversations, right? What to do, right? How to find your own strength, how to take your power back in any number of ways. That's the stuff that I'm trying to spend a lot more time doing. And when it comes to traditional UX stuff, like if I'm talking about, okay, how do you run a UX audit for a product? I'm trying to do it in a way that I think is uniquely mine, because I've seen a lot of those tried and true recipes and processes and things fall flat on their faces when they're attempted inside an organization. Because the way this stuff works on paper and the way it works out there in the real world, so to speak, are two completely different things.
Mm.
And the older I get, the less tolerance I have for any of that. I think that people get a lot of bad advice in any number of areas for things that just simply will not work and will only cause you more heartache. And I'm kind of tired of it. Right. So that's kind of my gig at UX 365. It's trying to touch all these topics in a way that in which no one else is talking about them. You know, Nick and Lisa both said to me last week, as a matter of fact, in relation to, we were having a conversation about something else. And they both mentioned the portfolio course, for example. My portfolio course is more about, here's how you need to be presenting yourself to the people who are going to be looking at it. And here's what they're thinking, right? This is not another recipe for here's how your portfolio should look. Here's how your case study should look. Here's what you need to say, because here's what you're up against. Here's the reality of what people need to see from you in order to get to the next level. And if you do not meet these checkpoints, it doesn't matter how great your portfolio looks. Okay. So stuff like that, I guess, is what I'm getting to. Again, I want things that people can use and try and put to use just so that they have better lives. Okay. More success, more upward trajectory in their careers. And a lot of that is dealing with, unfortunately, what we typically refer to as soft skills. They're not soft skills, they're hard skills.
Mm.
They're the hardest, most critical pieces of anything you're ever going to do. And they are typically what will hold you back. But nobody is teaching anybody how to deal with this shit. So I said, well, why not me?
No,
that's a
great.
really long answer to a simple question.
Yeah, that's great to know. So now we're getting down on time, so I'll ask the 3 questions I normally ask my guests at the end of the episode here.
Here it comes.
What about the web these days excites you and keeps you excited in what you do?
That's easy. That's what we were talking about before, right? It's all these folks, and it's mostly Twitter, quite frankly, because I don't see this to this degree everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
The number of voices who are absolutely standing up and saying, you know what? Fuck all this old way of doing stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's done. It's over. We're not accepting it anymore. We're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to be quiet. There are a number of social movements, okay, that to me have had the same power
Mm-hmm.
to sort of shine a hard light on people who deserve to have a hard light shined on them, and have essentially simultaneously moved some of those people out of the way and organizations out of the way, and given a lot of people a lot of power that they didn't know they had. Personal power. I'm not talking about something you lord over somebody else. I'm saying the kind of power that says, you know what, I'm a person. I am worthy of your respect. And in fact, I demand your respect, and I'm unwilling to accept anything else. I love that about where we are right now. I love it in every possible way. I think it's fantastic. And I think that's, again, that applies just to personal life. It applies to UX and product design as well. The heightened sense of responsibility that I think designers and developers and UX folks increasingly have is one of the greatest gifts that the web could have possibly ever given us.
I agree. If there were one thing about the web that you could change about, the web we know today, what would that be?
That's a really good question. Because there are lots of things.
Yes.
I mean, on the heels of that, the one thing that bothers me the most is the degree to which misinformation, harmful information can be spread so easily in a way that looks and feels and sounds often legitimate. I'm not talking about the crazy ass stuff that you see and you go, okay, these people are out in left field or right field, maybe, as it were. I'm talking about like legitimate sounding looking things. Like there are all these studies now about virus and vaccines and all that. And look, everything should be questioned, right? Everything can be questioned. Even, data from official sources. We all know how data can be manipulated. We all also know that with any news, no matter what side of the political spectrum it's from, for example, they're all full of shit to me. All right. Both sides are absolutely manipulating what they say and how they say it and how they present data and how they present statistics to serve their own ends. And those ends don't always have much to do with people, right? The truth is always somewhere in between. So the degree to which everything is manipulated, it really bothers me. And the degree to which they're taking advantage of a lot of people who don't have the time to really dig into and qualify every source that they read, because think about how much effort that takes, all right, to really qualify some scientific study that you read tomorrow, right? Think about the effort it's really going to take to find out whether these people are lying to you or not. That's massive. Nobody has that kind of time. These people are working jobs, right? They're trying to pay their bills, they're trying to raise their kids. They're stuck in traffic, commuting back and forth. I mean, no one has that kind of time. So that to me is probably the most unfortunate thing. It's like we said in the infancy of the web, one of the common phrases was, the great thing about right now is that anyone can build a website. The terrible thing about right now is that anybody can build a website.
Yeah.
We're kind of still there. And when we're there sort of on an exponential level.
Yeah. So I don't know. And just a short sidebar to the misinformation. I don't know if you saw this. It's because, we're friends on Facebook. A couple of days ago, I saw this. I had to put it on my timeline. It's a picture of a Tibetan monk with two men standing on each
I saw
side.
that. I didn't read it though. I don't know what that is.
So it says a Tibetan monk has been discovered in the mountains of Nepal. He is considered the oldest person in the world at 201 years old. Among his things, they found a piece of paper that said, "Stop believing all the crap you read on Facebook."
I saw that part. I thought it was a joke.
It is a joke.
Right? Okay. Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, that's
it's
awesome.
So easy, especially with now you have what do they call it? You can put anybody's face in a video now. And I can't remember.
That scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
That shit scares the hell out of me. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
And it sort of blows my mind that it's not talked about more. That's fucking dangerous.
Yeah. And I can't remember what they call it now. I'm blanking on that. But yeah, that and how
Like deep fakes, facial.
Yes, deep fakes. Yes, thank you.
That's frightening to me.
It's
It's
easy
frightening to me
do
that that's allowed to exist. Seriously.
Yeah. And the other thing too is how easy it is for you, me, anybody, a 5-year-old pretty much, that can take a picture, make a meme out of it, that, for whatever reason, throw it up
viral.
Yeah, it goes viral, and it has, misinformation on it.
Yeah.
And
that goes back to what we said before. It's very easy to do that. It's easy to be sensationalist. If I really wanted to double my followers right now, right? If I wanted to grow my base exponentially in a really ridiculously short period of time, there's all sorts of incendiary shit I could do.
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't. I mean, I can't. I'm just unwilling, right, to go there. There's nothing about it that feels good to me. But that's, quite frankly, that's one of the biggest ways that people sort of up their game,
So my last question is, what is your favorite part of front-end development, design, whatever, that you really like the most, that you nerd out over?
There's two parts to that. I've always nerded out over hard problems. I like really hard problems. For instance, I love enterprise development. I love enterprise software. People look at me like I have 3 heads when I say that. Because they are such tangled webs of stuff, not just the sort of overlooked, poorly treated, tacked on fixes of like legacy code in general, right? Older systems that have sort of been patched and patched and patched and patched and patched over the years. But the fact that they interface with 6 or 8 or 10 other things who are in equally bad shape, all of which are now being asked to interface with more modern systems that much better serve people's needs, that are much more efficient from a technological standpoint, do a better job on a functional level. It feels like a mountain of epic proportions to try and climb that hill. Like, how in the fuck are we going to get there?
Yeah.
There is so much wrong with this. How do we start? I love untangling that. I love being the person in the room because everybody feels overwhelmed. And this is where it leads into the second part of my answer. Everybody's overwhelmed. And they're being tasked to sort of reach this miraculous peak inside some ridiculous time frame, right? Because people think it's possible to estimate a redesign project like that, where you're talking about actually rebuilding 70% of the thing. And they'll say, oh, by January of 2023, we're going to be here. No, you're not. You're not. There's no way. There's no way you could know that. I don't care how much data you have at your disposal. There's no fucking way that you're going to be able to tell me you're going to be here by this date. Past the next 6 weeks, you don't know shit. All right. That's a fallacy, in my opinion. And in my experience, it's a fallacy. So you got all these people who are overwhelmed and who are like, oh, Jesus, what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
And in most cases, here's what I find. No matter what the makeup of the team is, these are almost always genuinely good people who care a great deal about this thing serving people, right? This thing being usable, it being better. Do companies come to me for with business needs and financial problems? Yes, that's always part of the equation. But when you get down to the team level, these are people who really care about whether or not this makes other people's lives easier or harder in a big way. So the other part that I love is getting to breakthroughs, not just for end users, but more so, quite honestly, in recent years, especially breakthroughs for people on that team, to get them to a point where they feel like all that pushing that rock up the hill, where at least this particular rock is going to fucking stay there. It's not going to roll back down on us. My job, essentially, in those situations is to help them get to that point. And one of the ways we do that is by ruthlessly saying, what's worth doing? I know you've been mandated to do all this stuff. I'm an outside guy. I don't work here. I don't care. Right?
Yeah.
What's really achievable here inside this time frame that we're talking about? It's this piece. So fine. Let's charge ahead. Let's get this piece nailed down to some reasonable certainty, and then we'll go do the very next thing. But when we get to that point and we get the win, and things that are fixed or better stay fixed or stay better over a sustained period of time, I love that. And what I love most about it is the sense of empowerment and accomplishment that it gives those people. That matters more to me than just about anything I do these days. All right. Because it's easy to be disheartened in a situation like that. It's easy to feel like all your effort is going nowhere. Right? There's no point to this work I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not solving anything. You can, and you are, right? You have something to give, and you have a victory that can be in your sights. I hate the way it discourages people. I hate the way it makes them feel about their jobs. I hate the way it makes them feel about their ability to contribute and succeed. I hate that. So to me, like, that's my moment. I'm a warrior for combating that. And this is how we do it.
Awesome way to close this out. So now, I didn't get to this part in the first half of our talk, but now that I am, I'd like to close out the podcast with my guests letting the listeners know what they currently have going on and where people can find you online. So the stage is yours.
All right. The easiest place to find me always is Twitter, because I spend way too much time there. Even when I should be doing other things, right? At Joe Natoli. The biggest things happening right now, I'm working on several books, 3 actually, because I'm stupid. The first is it's based on the Business of UX course that my wife and I created. It's called The Business of UX, but the book is probably going to be called something like the ultimate guide to starting and managing and succeeding in your own UX or design career, right? If you want to work for yourself, this is the guide from the ground up, right? From the minute you start asking yourself, I think I want to do this, from the legal parts to the form of the business, to taxes, to accountants, to dealing with clients, to promoting yourself, to contracts, to right, all of it. So everything we could possibly think of. So that is about, I'd say 80% complete at this point.
Okay.
The next book is on the topic of designing emotional resilience, which seems to be a thread, as I said, in a lot of the things that I do. So I decided it was high time that I started writing about that. And one of the things I'm doing with this book is I'm interviewing people, practitioners, right? People in the industry who have, in some cases, have had spectacular failures, right? Things that would sink anybody's ship. And I say, well, how'd you come back from that? That ability to get up again and again and again and again and again, no matter how hard or how often you've been knocked down from some truly difficult things, to me is your superpower, especially as a designer or UX or a developer, because this is a hard business. It's hard, and it's personally hard in any number of emotional ways. And I don't think we talk enough about that.
Yeah.
So that's the second book on that topic. It's about essentially how to build your superpower and then use it once you got it. The third book, I'm co-writing with my friend Vincent Braithwaite. It's called Designing Difficult Conversations, which is what it sounds like, right? It's how to deal with adversity in the workplace, basically, with things that are just, number one, maybe politically difficult or personally difficult, to things that are toxic, to things that are abusive, racist. Right? There's no, we both kind of felt like, nobody talks about this enough, number one. Number two, there's sort of no guide for saying, what do I do? I'm in this situation. What the hell do I do? And he and I both get people talk to us and ask us questions every month. Here's the situation I'm in. Here's this horrible thing that I'm dealing with. What do I do? And we think that sucks. All right. And that's putting it mildly. So he came to me with this idea, and he had already started it. And he said, would you think about maybe getting involved? And I went, hell yes. Right. It's kind of just something's close to my heart. So those 3 books, there are new courses coming out on learn.givegoodux.com, the UX 365 Academy. That's going to change in the coming year. For what it's worth, I talked about beta pricing, right? And not to make this sound like a sales pitch, but I feel like I have to start saying this now so that it doesn't come as a shock to people. Like, wait, what happened? We're going to have to raise prices in January. That's a given. All right. It's not something I really want to do. My accountant is looking me square in the face and saying, look, you can't keep doing this way.
Right.
It's, I mean, it hasn't even broken even in the last 2 years. And that's okay. I was okay with that. I knew for a certain period of time I was willing to do that. But on the heels of that, one of the things I'm going to try to do with the Academy as well, in terms of what's coming up, as I want to do more events, quite frankly, right? Workshops. I'm not going to use the term boot camps, but to the tune of where you can involve yourself for X amount of days and walk out of there with real, transferable, actionable skills, right? And it's going to be along a lot of these topics that we're talking about. So more events is what's coming next. I've spoken at lots of events. I've participated in lots of events, and for the last year, I've been thinking I should just do my own.
Yeah. Right.
For the things that I want to see. So that's all on tap, provided I don't pass out from exhaustion anytime soon.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah. Woo. That's me, man. It's like, if I have an idea for something, it's like, yeah, let's do that. If somebody else comes to me with an idea, hey, do you want to? Yes. It's the first word out of my mouth is yes.
That's the conversation my brain and I have. Oh,
Right.
here's an idea. Let's do it. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
then they keep piling up and piling up and piling up. Yeah.
Yeah. That's this guy, Don Beimer, wrote a book of short stories. It's called My Reach Exceeds My Grasp. I've always loved that phrase.
That is a good one. Yeah. That is a good
That's
one.
me. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's always, I have no ability to judge what I can actually pull off
Yeah.
in any given time. There's just a desire and motivation and fire to be like, yeah, let's do this. Find a way to do it.
Same here. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you for your time. You know, it's been
Thank you.
a great conversation.
Yeah.
You know, the first half, this now, and you know, always a pleasure to speak with you. And
Same.
whether it be on the Bird app or here. And I want to thank you for your time. It's been great. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna give you a quick shout out as well because of the voices that we talked about. For example, you know, right, people who are really adamantly trying to make all this work that we do better for people, to make it more responsive to people's needs, to make it more human, right? To give a shit about other people.
Yep.
You are definitely, my friend, at the forefront of that list, right? And you've been pushing this hard, or is harder than most people I know.
Thank you. I appreciate
And
it.
that may feel like a thankless task. I want you to know that it isn't. It matters. I see it. A lot of people see it.
Thank you. I
Right. So
appreciate that.
keep doing what you're doing as well.
Definitely. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah, man.
All right. So thank you, Joe, again. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Front End Nerdery podcast. I'll be back next time with a new guest, new conversation about front end design, development, and other topics. If you would please rate this podcast on your podcast device of choice, like, subscribe, and watch on the Front End Nerdery YouTube channel. Links to transcripts and show notes are there. I'm Todd Libby, and this has been the Front End Nerdery podcast. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.